Everybody, July 30th, 2025, here with your after hours recap. So, where do we begin? Jerome Powell spoke. We did not get the rate cut, and I don't think anybody was expecting it. I think people are a little bit more in line with September being that time that we get the rate cut. It felt a little bit like we were going to get, a little bit of a day two pullback, and that was happening. We didn't get the cut. Everybody was expecting to not have the cut, and sure enough, you get kind of a pullback into that no news effectively. And it felt like, hey, you know what? The market needs a little bit of digestion, but the market doesn't really care what I think. The market cares more about what the big boys are doing, and Meta and Microsoft absolutely stole the show in after hours. They reported earnings. Both of these names, Meta's resting right against the 50 simple moving average, and then this thing goes from $690 all the way to $780 and a new all-time high. You also had Microsoft, which this chart is insane. Is not the right word. You had the gap up on the last earnings report. Beautiful, beautiful trend this entire quarter above the 20 simple moving average. And now another gap up, $560. Just unbelievable. That, of course, dragged up pretty much everything except Apple. Amazon almost out to a new all-time high. Google was kind of flat, but Amazon got dragged out to a new all-time high. Nvidia got dragged out, to more all-time highs, $185. I don't want to say it's starting to get a little crazy, but these moves are insane to say the least. They are fun to watch. I'm not in them, unfortunately, but these moves on some of these mega caps is just unbelievable to watch. And like I said, Meta, Microsoft, they stole the show. Apple has earnings tomorrow. And with it in after hours, you had a lot of things moving. I do have a short in Rigetti, and of course, Microsoft said something about quantum, and you had a little bit of a gap up in a Rigetti overnight. And same thing, goes with the rest of them. And IONQ gapping up as well overnight. QBTS as well gapping up overnight. So they all did the exact same thing. Nice to see, even though I'm short, that themes aren't just completely imploding. That is a good sign that the market is still alive and well, and maybe doesn't want to give us that pullback just yet. And of course, according to futures markets, we are not getting it. I thought that the market, the Russell not really rebounding as strongly overnight. I don't make too much of it because, one, it's still the most crowded theme in terms of these markets, right? The Russell is a crowded short, where the Nasdaq's actually a crowded long, and one continues to just kind of grind higher, and then the Russell takes a little bit of a break. I'm not thinking too much into that or reading too much into that. I'm pretty sure most market participants know that September we do get a likely rate cut. There aren't a ton of setups that I think look fantastic. I was kind of just doing my normal nightly routine, and just kind of digging through, and a dash does look pretty good. Could it be buyable over today's highs? I think it's possible. A JFrog, this one's a little too thin for me, but this is a massive cup and handle. This one's got like a week out until earnings. Could it go higher? I think it can. I did get shaken out of Tesla, unfortunately, today. I was using lows of the day that I bought it, and that 315.5 level was the level that I was watching so I can get stopped out. And sure enough, I did get stopped out, and then nothing I can do about this thing just recovering and closing at $319. Otherwise, I would have been able to hold it. But it washed out, shook me out, and I have to respect my stops. So I will try to buy it again if we can take out today's highs, roughly that $325 level. AV I still think looks really damn good too. You're kind of finding support at the rising 20, once, twice, three times, very tight here on the right hand side. We will see if this name wants to get going. If I'm not mistaken, AV is an aerospace and defense name. Let me just triple check very quickly. It is aerospace and defense, and you've got some names within this group which look awesome. Rocket Lab still hanging in there, probably the most notable for me. bouncing right off of its 20-day today and a 6% up day. ASTS, another one that looks pretty dang good. And then obviously I'm also short Joby, and the damn thing has gone nowhere. I'm up peanuts on it right now. And it is just kind of flagging out here, holding on to the 20 simple moving average. We haven't even visited it at all. Still, kind of building what appears to be a potential high type flag. I still think it needs a little bit more before I would ever be comfortable buying this thing. 50+% away from the 50 simple moving average. Setups this extended from the 50 tend to be a little bit more failure prone, but definitely one to watch if we can tighten up more on the right hand side. Something that was notable today was the awesome move in a CEG. I thought this thing was great. Kind of broke out over this little flat base, shook everybody out, held on to the 5-day, and then just really, really pushed out today. Right there in terms of strength with a VST and a continuation overnight. And then you also obviously have GEV, just the powerhouse that it is, no pun intended, and just had an awesome trend for the quarter, another gap up for the quarter, and more continuation, and only an extra 10 points in the after hours session. So super awesome to see for a CEG. What else is really on the radar? KTOS, I think, could use a bit more digestion. Could this also be building out a high type flag very similar to Joby? I think so, ideally, and hopefully a little bit more digestion. DraftKings is one of the setups that have really caught my eye. I owned it a few days ago. It just didn't push out well enough. On 7/21, I was looking for a little break of that $45 level. You did it today. But going into FOMC, I didn't want to start piling on a bunch of new exposure, for the potential that you would just end up, kind of getting whipped around. And, DraftKings did not care about that at all. We're in the coming up to gambling season. Football's right around the corner. Gambling season is here. We live in a pretty degenerate country that loves to gamble, as you can tell by the stocks that have been running lately, like Open Door. DraftKings kind of fits the bill, and it looks like if we can kind of stay over that $45 level, this is one that I will try to find my way back into. The casino stocks still look pretty dang good. I don't love the setups here, and they're a little bit too slow for me, but something like a Wynn, Las Vegas Sands are still holding in there pretty dang well. And that's really it. Shopify also, actually, now that I just throw this in there, I got a few more. Shopify, I think, looks pretty dang good. Ideally, you build out this cup and handle a little bit more effectively. I want some more sideways, tighten up a bit more, just under this $130 level, and then over 129.40s, I would be a buyer of this name. I'd like to see BABA kind of continue to just hold here and then eventually take out that 124 level. That is the level of interest. AAOI, I was watching this thing as an undercut and rally of the 200 simple moving average. I'm still watching this thing. If we can start to rally back through the 200 simple moving average as early as tomorrow, I would consider trying to get myself positioned in an AAOI. And obviously IBIT, I don't know how much longer we have to go sideways before we finally start to break out, but it found support on the rising 20 simple moving average. Again, it built now a very subtle higher low. If we can start to take out today's highs, 65.5, I think that would look pretty good. And then 68.5, I think that would be fantastic for some potential ads. And I still own it, and I'm trying to just be patient with it, let it work. I've trimmed some off, so I feel comfortable with whatever this thing decides to do. Below today's lows and Bitcoin acting weak, I will cut it. Above today's highs, I will add to it. So, this thing can kind of break both ways, and that's exactly what happens when you build a range like this. So, not going to argue with it, just going to react to whatever happens. Obviously, you're getting a pretty big gap up in the NASDAQ, in the ES. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at the open, but I do know that it's just prudent. Again, you have to remember where we've come from. It's just good to remember, be patient at the open, let your levels develop. If you're using a 5-minute opening range break or a 15-minute opening range break, to wait your 15 minutes. And I think that that's always the best idea. Just be a little bit patient. Things are gapping up quite a bit overnight. Is there going to be some profit takers that show up in the morning? I think it's very possible. Look no further than SoFi a few days ago, where you have quote unquote good earnings, you're gapping up overnight, and then yesterday just becomes a complete sell off in SoFi. So could something like this happen in Microsoft, in Meta, I don't know. But at the same time, you'll get a little bit more information, after the open. You don't have to be in your stocks within the first 60 seconds of the open. So always good to kind of keep that in mind. I still do have longs in ARC, CCL, IBIT, Oklo, Toast. I have shorts in SoFi, which I covered half today. Rigetti, which unfortunately is gapping up a little bit on me overnight, and Joby, which has gone absolutely nowhere for me on the short side. I am slightly green on it, but over 18.5, I will not be hanging out with the short any longer. I still think there's a handful of good looking setups out there. I don't think there's a ton to be super excited about. Large caps continue to carry everything. Semiconductors continue to act well. Banks continue to hold in there. And maybe a little bit more digestion in some of these aerospace and defense names, and we can go ahead and get re-involved in those. So yeah, hopefully just be a little bit patient at the open, and that's really it for me in terms of thoughts. I really didn't see anything else that I thought was too alarming. Like I said, semiconductors continue to rock, and mega caps. I mean, they're carrying everything. Big earnings report tomorrow with Apple. FOMC today was a big nothing burger. Russell 2000 didn't really bounce much in after hours, but I'm not too concerned about them. I think, it being a crowded short, and market participants knowing that September is when we get our likely rate cut, my expectation would be that the Russell can get picked right back up as early as tomorrow if the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 stay strong. And even still, I think the NASDAQ or the Russell can do fairly well, even if the NASDAQ doesn't do a whole lot from here. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you all bright and early tomorrow for pre-market prep. Cheers.